Did you go live this time?
Yeah, we're good. Welcome to another episode of the Anti-Development Podcast, the show about everything and nothing. And you just went blank.
I did?
Yeah,
Son of a bitch.
I'm to talk to a square box here today. There we go.
Sorry, man. I was trying to share it on Facebook, but apparently I can't do that. So fuck them
Yeah,
people.
we'll get you afterwards.
All right.
Yeah, so just before we went live on this, we're talking about how like weight loss and business, essentially everything in life comes down to giving too many fucks about everything. Like what it will mean, what will happen in the future, the expectations we create about stuff, and all the attachments to caring too much. And I think the problem is that people think that if you don't give any fucks, that you don't care. But that's not really the case. It's just that you're not giving all of your attention and energy to the attachment of something that we fear ultimately is going to happen in the end.
Or attachment to the all the fucking mistakes that you made. You know, like we tend to take the past, bring it into the present, and it creates this emotion, and we project that into the future, um, as if you know. And I mean, considering what we see on a regular basis with the internet culture, it makes a lot of sense that that's a fear, because if something I said in 1993 can come back and cancel me today, then I'm in some fucking trouble, because I was an idiot in 1993. Well, shit, I've been an idiot a lot. You know what I mean? So, like, I know that I was doing the best I could at that time. And luckily, I've actually reached out and made amends to people that I feel like I've harmed. And when people do come out of the woodwork and say, well, you were mean to me in high school and made fun of me for being short, I'm like, okay, I'm sorry. You know? So I'm willing to accept those consequences. But that's one thing that I noticed with me, that perfectionism that says, like, I wouldn't be having this conversation at all if you didn't say, hey, let's record some of this shit. You know? How many years have you been listening to me saying I should start a podcast? You know?
And here we are. But I think to that point too, it's like we hold on to all that stuff, right? Like the past conversations, the past failures, and we carry this story and narrative about something that we may have fucked up about, and we just internalize it, and it becomes this is me, and usually it's like whoa, this is me. I'm like a victim of the circumstance, and then it fucks up our whole energy and anything that we're trying to create. Because if we're in that space all the time, whether it's like the judgment or the shame of what happened in the past, then we're trying to create from this shame and judgment space, and it's so confining. It's just like it's small, and it's like you just feel trapped. And this is where like the mindset shit really doesn't work, because you're like trying to outthink this energetic problem that was created, and you can think about it all day long. You can do mindset work all day long, but without getting out of that lower vibrational state of attachments to all this stuff and what make it mean, it's just like we talked about this in the last podcast. It's like the blue balling yourself with personal development work that fills up time. It makes you feel good, but you're fundamentally exactly in the same spot that you were 5-10 years ago if this shit does not get detached.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's I started rereading my favorite bookshelf. I have one shelf that I'm like, if I die, just read all those books, you'll figure it out. And the first book is Mind. The second one is Aware, both by Dr. Dan Siegel. And he actually created a mental picture of a wheel and a hub of awareness. And inside the hub, I never even recognized it until I started rereading both of these books a couple weeks ago. Inside the center of the hub, he calls it the knowing, and everything on the hub, your sensory expressions, your mental frameworks, your memories, even your awareness of that awareness is actually on the hub. He calls that the known. So he's like, we all we need to do is really bring our attention into the space, like you say, like I say, in that space of knowing, and then operate from there, and not get, I call it getting sucked under, because surfing's my metaphor. That stream of consciousness, we live in an ocean of energetic experience that gets interpreted into our brain and then creates this construct of a storyline, because I can remember from 1980 on, and then that must be who I am, where I can, when I'm in that place of knowing, that same story's there, but it's a little distance. It's like watching you talk, as opposed, like, I'm not attached to your story. I don't really give a fuck about your story. You know what I mean? Not that I don't care about you, but I have no attachment to it. So I can point out little things that you might not be able to see if you're in that story. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and it's just be able to discern between the two, because like you can't operate without your conditioning to an extent, but you can be aware of your conditioning, right? It's like meditation. You can't really clear your head, but you can be aware of your thoughts and not be attached to your thoughts and make it mean I am my thoughts. So it's just being able to separate between the two, so that you're coming from this space of more trust and more certainty without it going through this filter of the conditioning to try to understand the world. And the problem is that so many people just operate through this conditioning as the only framework or paradigm, that they abandon the knowing completely. And then there's never really that sense of self in the experience. It's just the conditioning and the sensory experience. And we're lost in that. Kind of like the Matrix analogy.
That's easy to do too. I mean, it's so easy to build caverns in your mind and get lost in them or go down the wrong tunnels, so to speak, because especially as much stuff is out there, like there always seems to be some levels, like you can achieve this level, when actually, like, you just got to let go. And that the thing that I'm relearning, I'm a huge fan of systems theory, complex systems theory. The book The Goal, it's a novel about business. It's one of the best business books I've ever read. And it's about systems theory, about the fact that most businesses are optimizing for the wrong thing. After I read that book, I realized that I'm optimizing everything for happiness. I have 3 different categories where happiness falls under: happy life, happy wife, happy customers. If I optimize everything for those inside of those, and then see how they integrate together as one whole picture, I make completely different decisions on everything I do. And everything I do is more fun, more effective. So one of the things in systems theory is the idea of emergence, that the brain is actually an emergent property of a complex system that's inside here, that's interacting with a complex system that's interacting inside of the whole universe is a complex system. And if you let go of the processing and sit in that place of knowing, what we're actually experiencing in that mental framework is the brain making sense of the world. But we tend to grab onto these concepts too quickly, get sucked into them. So if you stay in that sense of knowing, it'll actually dissolve some of the grief that you need, some of the trauma that you have, some of the resistance that you're feeling will actually dissolve, because what it's trying to do is self-organize into a cohesive entity, so to speak. Like a snowflake hitting the atmosphere, it has its own vibrational frequency. Each one kind of just comes in and forms itself. Our consciousness is doing that all the time. So if we just let go of the I am part of it and watch it unfold, then that's where we can actually start to detach from the process and let it unfold even better, and get more, as you say, um, get more into the trusting part of it, and be more trustworthy. Because if you do it this way and you get up and just pick one thing and do that, and then come back to the place of knowing and say what's next and do that, and come back to it never, like, you can't plan a 24 step from here to there. You're not going to take all 24 of those steps. I don't care what you do. Where you are right now and what you envision will never look the same, never feel the same, and never be experienced the same as you have it in your head, because you're not the person that's going to get there. Does that make sense?
Yep. And that's the problem with traditional goal setting and planning, is that from the space we are right now, we try to extrapolate in the future based off what we think is going to happen. And typically it's very rigid. Like, we're trying to build out a business and then we have all these steps we're going to take our clients through all the time. But it's like this thing is constantly evolving and shifting based off of, our interactions, who we are in it. And if we wait for everything to be done before we do it, we're going to procrastinate, because there's always the fear, because there's lack of trust of myself in the process. And then it's like, okay, when we enter this in from a space of trust, I'm going to figure it out because I know who I am in the situation, then it's a much more fluid model that actually is more adaptable and works very well. And it creates so much less resistance around having to have this end goal done, because it's always changing constantly. And we need certainty to an extent, but it's always the certainty in self, which is going to allow us to get there in a faster, easier, more enjoyable way. And we love to plan, right? We're obsessed with planning so we can control the outcome and control the future. But there's so much fucking time wasted in planning for things that we don't really have a control over, just to make ourselves feel better in a scenario. So we can just completely fuck that concept real quick. And just by knowing ourselves, that as we develop further, then the whole business or plan is going to develop as a result.
It's like that scene in Raiders of the Lost Ark, where he gets to the chasm and he has to have faith for the next step. So he throws out the rocks, and there's actually a bridge there that looks hidden. The steps will appear as you take the steps that you need to take now. But what we're trying to do is what I try to do in my health, my business, even sometimes in my relationship, is solve problem 14. I'm like, well, what happens if this happens? And then what happens if that happens? And I'm trying to solve this equation that might never happen, as opposed to taking the actions that I feel like would be a smart move to take right now, right today.
Right. And that's like when I work with my clients all the time. It's like, well, what do you want to do? And do that. It's like, okay, I'll do that. And all of a sudden we keep taking these steps. We keep walking. But it's always this attachment to the outcome of the what if. But fuck the what if, just do it anyway. And then it's like, it's gonna be so much simpler and so much easier.
Yeah. And that's like one of the oldest concepts. It's in the Bhagavad Gita.
Yeah, you're back, but you're muted.
All right. How about now?
You're good.
Hello? All right.
Yep.
Sorry about that. The electricity went out. So I'm working off of Wi-Fi right now. So anyhow. But I was saying that what you just said is actually one of the base principles of almost every major religion. In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna comes down to talk to Arjuna, and Arjuna's looking across the battlefield and sees I think it's like his uncle or cousins or something. And Arjuna's like the best warrior, so it's like Achilles, like if he's going across there, these people are dying. And he's having a problem with this, because he's like, what are we fighting for right now? Like, I don't even understand. Like, I got to go kill my uncle, my brother. Like, it doesn't make sense because they're on the other side. And Krishna says, well, you don't really have the perspective to even judge whether or not this is the right thing. Like, you were built for something, and your job is to show up and do the thing and let results happen. Because you're not, how does it say, you're not entitled to the fruits of your labor. The labor is your fruit. There's something to that effect. And if you don't fall in love with the process of anything, if the process is hell, like getting in shape or eating healthy, in your mind, if you have a mental construct that that this is a battle and I gotta fight it and all of this stuff, then yeah, you're gonna lose this battle. But if you look at the fundamental step and just take those and play that game and stop caring about the outcomes happen better than you ever imagined them. You know, that's at least that's the experience I had going from single to relationship. Um, the business that supported me all year long, there's nobody that teaches the type of business model that I ended up in. They're like nobody's teaching to go out and do this, get that, and do this, get that. It just happened. It just unfolded, and it unfolded like you said when I was just like, I don't want to do that. I'm gonna do this instead because that feels right to me, and it felt right to me, and it worked out pretty damn good too. You know, so we've practiced this in some areas. I think everybody's practiced this in some area of their life, that they just don't know the fundamentals that they can apply it in the area that they're struggling in now. Because somebody, I mean, most people are successful at something, you know. So how do you help people realize that the struggle is more about the internal rules that they think they have to live by, as opposed to the actual rules of life? How do you help people recognize, or do you just let them bullshit themselves and say, well, what do you want to do? Is that the magic? Just, well, what do you feel like doing? Yeah, go do that, see how it works out. Like, is that it? Like, there's got to be more to that.
There's more to it, but that's an important part, because we deny our intuition because we're so used to our conditioning to tell us what to do, right? So we deny the knowing, instead rely on the programming in our minds to give us the next step based off of rational thought, based off of intellectualizing things. And so we don't listen to intuition. We only look at the evidence, right? We have a list of pros and cons. We make all of these decisions, but we don't actually act out of choice, which is our intuition. This feels right. I should do this. I have this insight about an idea, but I'm not going to do it because X, Y, and Z, fear, doubt, disbelief, etc. But we have to know what we actually want and what we're going to say yes to and what we're going to say fuck no to. And a lot of times we say,
so that's, wait, slow down, wait. So there's a distinction right there that I haven't heard you make before, and I think I want you to unpack that for people, because when people hear somebody like you and me, who are coaches that help people get shit done and make shit happen, say fuck your goal. I don't give a, like, I'm the coach that doesn't give a fuck about your goal that you come here with, because it's not the thing, you know. And you're like, traditional goal setting doesn't work for most people, but at the same time, you have to know what it is that you want. So can you open up that distinction for people so that they can understand that? Because there are some methods of traditional goal setting that we still use, but not in the same context and not in the same application that most people teach out there. So can you make a distinction between knowing, or at least identifying, what you think you want, so that you can start opening up that intuition, so that you can get to the place of knowing, so that then you can say, fuck, I don't care about my goals, no fucks given, I'm just going to go for this?
I think there's two different things that you mentioned there that we have to separate first. Okay, let's just take the goal of $20,000 a month, right? The challenge is that we become so attached to that number and that desire that it fucks with our energy and our state to create the outcome, because there's such an agenda placed on the outcome in and of itself. Mm-hmm. Right? So it's like, okay, it's more of like $20,000 a month, cool. But sometimes there'd be so much pressure created around that. I need to do this, I need to do that, I have to do this, I have to do that. And the way that we are showing up in the experience in order to create it becomes so convoluted, because we're chasing after this thing that we want so badly, or that our goal is so focused on, that it fucks up with the process of it happening more organically and freely. If we take it to weight loss, I want to lose 15 pounds. You step on the scale every day, it's not fast enough. All that pressure starts to build, the internal resentment, the frustration, the lack of patience, and just takes over this energetic frame. It starts to collapse, and it's like, oh shit, fuck. And then we start eating more, and we start missing workouts. We don't sleep as well. Everything else starts to build up instead of just setting the intention, cool, or not even setting intention, which is probably the better way to do it. It's just, I'm going to do this thing, and it's detached completely from it, and be present in the steps.
I used to, when I was a bartender back in the day, anytime I would find a person, like there's some people that just have this social anxiety to them. Mm-hmm. And I have that as well. That's why I was great as a bartender, because I can talk to anybody, and there's a bar and you're coming for the bar. So it has nothing to do with me, and I'm chatty Cathy. So I would recognize people like me who would come in and they had no like sense of social, what's going on around them, no social intelligence whatsoever, and I knew that they were there hoping that someone would grace their presence, you know. So I would teach these guys that I not pick up artistry or anything like that, but I would at least get them to imagine that they already had somebody at home, and that they were coming out because they were just, it was a night out, and it was girls' night for her, guys' night for him, and he was coming out just to enjoy the night with people and watch the game, have a few drinks, you know, hang out and just meet interesting people and leave it at that, because they're going home to somebody. And almost every time somebody would embody that when they came in, they would meet somebody and end up getting their phone number and going out on dates and start dating them, because they weren't putting pressure on trying to go out and get laid. You know, they were out having a really good time, and whoever was next to them, that person was going to have a good time with them. So when other people are actually looking around and they're seeing that you're just like having fun with everybody, that they kind of gravitate towards you, kind of that process. And then when you don't have that energy on you, then you're just more attractive. So and I say that for guys and girls right now, because every woman can spot the guy that's coming into a bar and desperate to get laid. You know, we spot that desperation, and it never really, sometimes it works, but it doesn't work that often. And that's what we're doing with our weight loss goals. We're desperate to become that person, and that desperation feeds the I need ice cream, you know. Or with a business, we're desperate to hit that number, and we don't realize that with working out, with building a business, that the success is built on failure points. And if you're not going to push and build the capacity for the tension that you have to be able to hold to lift the heavy weights, you're probably not going to get the results. If you're not going to get past all of the, whoa, that's too expensive, or oh, who do you think you are charging all of that? Because people will say that no matter what, no matter how good you are. If their best friend transformed and then they come to you and they're like, well, why would you charge that much? And I'm like, dude, you're the one that's, you came to me. Like, you know, and your friends from high school, they're definitely going to make fun of you, you know, like you, until you actually experience it for real. The fear's what's holding you back. Once you experience it for real, then you're like, wait, what are they talking about? Like once you actually experience the thing that you're afraid of, it's not really anything to. It's like getting punched in the face or getting hit by a baseball in little league. You know what I mean? Like I didn't play little league for the longest time because I was so scared, and I had a coach that was kind of an asshole, and he recognized that, so he beamed me with a ball in the back really hard, and I was like, ah, and he was like, all right, not that bad, huh? Now stop worrying about it and hit the damn ball. And then I started cracking the bat. So that's the thing that I think people need to recognize as well, is that those unfounded fears that are producing the results that you are kind of ashamed of and you feel disappointed about are not really that bad once you actually experience them. Like rejection, it's not that bad once you stop rejecting yourself, you know? So
And that's the thing too. It's like people are actually afraid of getting out of the prison because they've known the prison for so long. It's kind of safe.
that's a good analogy. I actually know, actually had experience with a guy that spent from 14 to 20 in juvie, or 14 to 19 in juvie. They sent him, he got out, committed a crime 6 months later, spent 9.5 years. So from 14 years old until he was almost 30, this guy was in prison. Gets out of prison, goes through the halfway house, does all of that stuff. And once he got out on his own, once he had his own apartment, he was in the bar one night and he was like, he was literally planning a crime that he could get years so he could go back to jail because he didn't know how to operate as a human being. He didn't know the rules of modern society, you know, like the rules are pretty clear cut in prison. Apparently there's a pecking order of the inmates, and then there's the guard order, and everybody's on a tight schedule and all of this stuff. And it just made sense to him because he lived in gladiator school for so long of his life. My dogs are running out. I gotta let them out.
That's cool. But like that's the thing, right? Everyone says they want change. When it comes down to it, we're definitely afraid of it because of what freedom actually means. And so we hide behind all this bullshit, all these excuses because we can get off and masturbate on the idea of change because it actually feels good to think about how great my life will be if I could finally just fucking have the life I want. So happiness is found in thinking about it. And so we fantasize over and over and over again. But when it comes down to actually make it, it's like, oh no, that's too much, or that's too scary, or I can't right now, or all this other bullshit. So we're voluntarily putting ourselves back in prison, but we complain about how shitty life is in it. So we can keep fantasizing about how great it will be to finally fucking leave.
It's learned helplessness, huh? Learned helplessness.
I'm
So
sure they got
what's
a self-help book on that though.
what's that?
I'm sure they got a self-help book on that though.
Oh, they definitely do. I probably got 3 of them. You want me to grab them? I have a nice collection of masturbatory materials. So if somebody other than like get on a call with one of us, somebody's like sitting here nodding their head at this point going, holy shit, these guys are right. Like what is the self-guidance part of it? Like what can we give somebody that's never going to be our client? What can we give them right now that's going to hopefully be that thing that opens up the imaginary door that they, or at least lets them see the wall and go, wait, that's not even there. Like how can you unplug somebody from the matrix right now?
Well, talking about is different than the energy that's required to activate the change. But in terms of pragmatic advice, there's probably something in your life that you want to do or say no to or remove yourself from, but haven't because out of the fear of what will happen if you do. And that is probably the very thing that's going to set you fucking free. You know what you want to do, but haven't done it yet because of the attachment to what will happen when it happens. So if you remove yourself from that and do that very fucking thing that you've been waiting to do forever, that's your key out.
But what if I fail?
Doesn't matter.
I know it doesn't,
Doesn't
because
matter.
you will. Like you will. You're gonna suck at it. Like you will, because you haven't done it before. Like that's how life works. There's a learning curve and a process. And the first part is I don't know what the fuck I'm doing. The second part is I think I might know what I'm doing, but now I know all the things I don't know that I'm doing. Now I know how stupid I really am. So then you go into that pit, and then you start to come up, and you actually form a level of competency. It's, if you do it every day, then it's usually about a 3-week period to where you start to feel like a competent human being and you start to trust yourself. So you said something about energy. So we can talk about, how'd you put it? We can talk about it.
We could say the words, but when you have a conversation with somebody, they can feel that shift.
Yeah.
We're not really having it right now. This is more of a discussion versus an
Yeah.
intimate setting with the person who is ready to actually change. That shift can happen in 15, 20 minutes.
Yeah. Yeah. Speaking of energy, uh, what's that guy's name that I didn't know? Like, apparently I'm a complete asshole for not knowing who this
Oh,
David,
David Dita,
what's his name?
David Dita, the way of
David
the superior man.
Way of the Superior Man. So what's that guy all about? Like, it just give me the short version because I'm not going to buy the book. I know that you recommend the book. I'm not going to buy it. It seems like a cross between tantra and nihilism, all wrapped up in like all wrapped up in a real good Merriam Williamson bow. You know, that's what it seems like to me. Like, and I can't find anything about the guy other than his own writing about himself. So I'm just wondering, does he even have a relationship? Is he married? Does he know what it's like to be in a real relationship, or is he too evolved for that stuff?
How much have you researched him? Because it's all over the place. I don't know. I don't know how you.
I was googling him yesterday about his. I like I said, like yesterday, right as I was having a conversation with some dude on my Facebook page, who I don't even know who he is. Um, I sent you those screenshots. Uh, I was like, I've never heard of this guy. So I went to my other buddy, who's a um, he's very skeptical. He's a psychopharmacologist. So I always go to him when I want to make sure that I'm not going down a rabbit hole I don't need to go down. And he was like, I've never heard of that guy before. So then I started Googling him, and anytime I Google anybody, I Google their name, programs, look at all their materials, look at their website, and then I type in their name plus scam, their name plus bullshit. Well, I do because I there's if not that every critique is good, because like as a business owner, I think that you should not read negative critique, like any critiques. Like, I don't, like, as a restaurant person, I don't really care about the what is that, Yelp,
Yep.
because when I go to Yelp, I read reviews and I read the tone of the review, and sometimes based on negative reviews, I go to the restaurant. If, like, especially like a steakhouse, for example, if somebody is complaining that it took so long for their meal to come in a 4 or 5 star restaurant, obviously that person's a McDonald's fan and they don't know what good food is anyhow. So I'm going to basically go there because, you know, anyhow,
Spite.
um, I didn't read anything about his personal life other than the fact that he does workshops, and like everybody seems to have gone to his workshops except for me. So, like, what's the whole energetic masculine feminine frame? Because I don't know anything about that kind of stuff.
So it'd be more constructive if you read the book and we talked about it, because otherwise it's read the book and we'll have a. I'm gonna challenge you to add another book to your bookshelf. You may have to buy another bookshelf for this next one, or you could just place it in a nice
This
spot.
book, this book's so good that it needs its own shelf.
You can have a nice tapestry over it. You can light some candles on either side. You can kneel before it and do your readings. But just so even more
I
constructive,
mean, when I started doing the research and I started going into groups and typing his name and seeing all the discussions in it, it seemed pretty cultish to me. Like everybody that was talking about the feminine mask, like they were having all of these really in-depth conversation, and I was like, this seems a little hyperbolic to me. Like, none of this is real. You guys are fucking making all of this up in your brain and then causing yourselves to have to live up to some expectation that you can't live up to. Like,
everything in this industry can get twisted that way, right? Like somebody said something and there's parroting from the next coach, the next coach, the next coach, and it gets so caught up in labels and identities and like different ways of how things have to be done that we lose ourselves inside of the very thing that we're trying to emulate or create. And so it's like there's like copycat upon copycat upon copycat, and it's like, well, what I thought I was going to get out of this is actually just somebody else's container and their perspective is in the way of thinking.
Like that in the marketing business too. Coaches that are coaching coaches to coach coaches on how to build a coaching business to coach coaches.
And
Like they're all just parroting Frank Kern's shit, who's parroting Dan Kennedy, you know? Like,
which leads to a whole bunch of these business struggles is because I'm trying to be someone else in the business who made it work for them, but it's not for me. And I'm feeling overwhelmed, anxious, stressed out. I can't get the shit to work because we lose sight of us and our knowing in the very business we're trying to create because we're looking to somebody else to give us permission to actually be ourselves in it. Ironically, that's how it works. And so it's like, yeah, these some frameworks are useful, some systems and structure is useful, but it's like if I'm doing a whole bunch of shit that I don't really want to do in the first place, what the fuck am I creating a business for? I'm going to be miserable the whole time, which goes to back to what I really want.
same with that. What you just said is the same. Like, I think that what you just said is very important to all of the people that answered on my question yesterday about trying to eat clean or trying to eat healthy. What I know for me is that I've made a story of eating clean fucking sucks, you know? So of course I'm not going to eat clean. Like if I'm like, oh, but eating ice cream is so much better than eating, you know, healthy or cleaner. Well, I don't even know what clean eating means personally, but you know, like there's that story, and then that you're resisting that thing because as a 6-year-old you didn't want to eat Brussels sprouts, you know, and as a 40-year-old you're like, dude, Brussels sprouts are awesome, you know. So that's one thing that I think that we all do is we have these mental frameworks. So what's this whole thing with the masculine feminine? I know I asked this before and I still just don't get it. So I just got to read David, what's his name?
David Dita. I mean, there's everyone has their own way of interpreting this, right? I don't use that so much in terms of my way that I speak about it because I don't want to speak about it that way. I just speak it off of this scale, right? So we have this higher level and we have this lower level. Down here is all the manifestation of the shit and the conditioning and the programming. So think of it as this, all my problems lie at the bottom of this hierarchy. And at the top, there's freedom, as nebulous as that sounds. There's no fucks given, there's no attachments. It's doing what you want to do, it's playing your own game, creating in your own playground. So if we look at this from a scale from top to bottom, this is the shit, you're in a porta potty, and this is the top, you're at the king of the hill, the playground on the jungle gym. And so we just look at this very linear scale, where am I operating at? Shame, guilt, anger, resentment, apathy, that's going to be the bottom. Peace, reasoning, understanding, enlightenment, that's more at the top. So it's getting ourselves out of this attachment based energy of giving way too many fucks, making everything mean something, being very reactive, being very in our own heads, to being more up here, detached, more deconditioned. That's a simpler way of thinking about it.
I like it that way. I think for me, what's happening with this whole conversation is the label masculine, feminine. I think that's where I'm thrown off by it. I'm like, what do you like? What do you mean high masculine, high? Because it just seems like everything gets dumped into the feminine qualities that. And I'm like, don't you need kind of both to get balanced, like a little bit, like not everything. Like from what you're saying on that hierarchy, then obviously, yeah, the detached way of being, not being in the shame, not being in the shit, so to speak, makes a lot of sense. So I think that makes more sense in my mind. Now I can actually take what you just said and apply it to what they're trying to say with masculine and feminine, because I think that that's such a really muddied and convoluted conversation considering the polarities. What I'll bring it back to aware in mind. What Dan Siegel is saying is that what we're looking for in that place of knowing is a state of coherence where we have clarity, where we have a sense of harmony inside of us, where we know what's right for us, and we also have a moral compass, so we're not being complete sociopaths out there by not giving a fuck. And he says that basically instead of grouping everybody up in their own little diagnoses, if you can separate from people from chaos to rigidity, um, and we're trying to either come from rigidity closer to chaos or from chaos closer to rigidity, and somewhere in between that spectrum is that state of harmony we're looking for. That most people are almost bipolar in that fact that like the emotions come up and they just flood our brain and flood our minds with all of this madness, or we have such a tight, narrow view of what should be done and what needs to be done next that we can't do anything outside of that. You know, I actually just got done with a conversation earlier today with a guy that doesn't want to get therapy because he grew up in a household where you don't talk to therapists, counselors, or cops. And I'm like, so based on that answer, go get therapy, dude, because like, I, like it seems like you need someone to help you open up your worldview a little bit. I think that some people have too open of a worldview and they have no cohesiveness. So finding that place of harmony inside is important. Thanks for clearing that up, man, because there's just so many people that like they're having a conversation and using language about the high feminine and the masculine, and I'm like, huh?
Well, that's the problem with labels too, is it can become very, like you said, convoluted. And it's like that in of itself becomes very one dimensional. It can be. It all depends on how we interpret it and how we conceptualize it and what we know about it. So you can have two conversations with two different people, say the exact same language, have it resonate with someone and completely not. Right. So it's like it's not the words, it's not the labels, it's not the definition behind it, but the energy behind it. And every person has a different way of bringing that across. And a problem with labels is they become so one dimensional that it doesn't encompass what it actually is because we are limited by the very different definitions we create around it. Just like our ability to view nature is limited by our tools in order to observe it.
I love it. I like that you used resonance because that's one of my favorite. I was in a marketing class about 6 or 7 months ago, and this guy was talking, and he's a musician who built this marketing program or built this program and sold a shitload of it. So they came and interviewed him, and he was talking about when he first met this other guy, and he was like, you know, as a musician, I think of everything as music. So there's an octave. There's 12 different notes on an octave. And if you put your fingers down on a guitar, at least, if you put your fingers down on certain strings, that makes this sound and it turns into something else. Or like with a chorus, you've got all of these different people singing different notes that blend together and create this thing that's transcendent. And your brain, when it hears this, can't help but to just tune in because your brain loves resonance. And if on a guitar, if you're making a G and you move your finger down, one finger down one string, that creates a different type of chord and it's called dissonance. And he was like, so at one point I was just like, huh, what if people were like that? What if there are like 12 different archetypal types of people and I can make music with some, but I just don't resonate with others. And that's okay. Like they don't have to resonate with me. They can have their own experience, but I don't have to try to fit in with them. I don't have to. And he was like, it just was so freeing. And he said, so when I go to parties, all I'm doing is looking around and feeling. And he said, my heart always just knows that's my people. That's my dude right there. That chick is going to, I'm going to love that chick. She's going to be my wife's best friend. I just know it. And he was like, so I don't really waste time with small talk with other people. I just look around for people I resonate with and jam and have a really good time with it. And I think that that's one thing that has helped me since I did that, since I went through that course has helped me is that that's what I'm looking for. Like if we get on a call, I don't even consider it a sales call. Like I don't know until the end of the call whether or not I'm going to invite you back Like, I'm just going to ask you a bunch of questions and see how you answer them, talk to you, help you get some clarity. You know what I mean? And if we resonate and I'm like, you know what? I want to spend the next few months of my life with this human being, I might invite you. You know what I mean? But if we don't, then I'm not, to some degree, I'm probably judging, but I'm judging whether or not I resonate. I'm judging whether or not the vision that you're having and the thing that you're working on seems compelling to me. Like, and I found that that's just it's so much easier. Like, I've had people say, so how do I work with you? And I'm like, you don't, like, you're not, like, there's nothing I can do for you. Like, we're not going to be able to work together. Maybe you should go talk to this guy. He's more your speed, you know? So
And
how can we, huh?
that's the importance of knowing your no, right? Like, we can take on clients that we don't really feel like are a good fit, no matter how much money they pay us. But when you're like, no, this ain't gonna work, but we take it because we're needy, then that fucks up our energy. And then it's like, shit, I gotta spend the next 3 months working with someone I really don't want to work with, but they're giving me some money for it. That's gonna fuck up everything.
Yeah.
So having that knowing behind it, whether this person's a fuck yes or a fuck no, and following through on that, not with the conditional program of I need this based off of the outcome they're going to provide me in the form
Yeah.
of funds.
Do you have any kind of, like, are you just always in this state now? Or is that just my insecurities projecting themselves onto you?
Not always.
Not
Every day.
always.
No. Some days are better than others, but
Like yesterday, you got off the phone, you were like, fuck, I don't want to talk to him today.
yep.
I'd rather take a nap during that time.
Yep.
Okay. All right.
I mean, you can be tired some days, and I was on Zoom calls all day long. I was like, yeah, I need to take a nap. So we rescheduled.
Yeah. Yeah. I like it. I like it. So what can we do to bring this around for people if they are actually watching? Um,
I think that we have to look at we talked about this in previous conversations is what does this mean about me if I do this? Or what does the past mean about me? And what do I make it? Because like this fear of failure, if I fail, that means I'm a failure. I'm applying a label and definition to myself that's quote unquote negative. And if I see myself as a failure, then I'm already kind of destining myself to everything else become out of the energy of failure, right? So it's like this label that we apply to ourselves that's usually pretty negative, right? Like people don't walk around with this great label of themselves. There's always some kind of insecurity that we attach to because our brain loves negativity and it loves to focus on the shit that doesn't really matter, but that's what it does. So it's always like, if I do this, what does it mean? Doesn't matter. And as soon as we can recognize that all the shit that we worry about fundamentally doesn't really matter because we trust ourselves and we're content with either outcome, then we can be free. But we love to tell ourselves story to reinforce the narrative about who we think we are. But we're not what we think we are. We're independent of our thoughts and the stories we tell ourselves about ourselves.
I think that last part was pretty important for people to understand that you're not the thoughts that are running through your head. That is a part of the processing energy and information being processed through the biology and atmosphere. Our awareness is actually inner awareness and inter awareness. That's one of there's a part of our brain, I think it's called the colossum, that connects and bridges those gaps and helps you understand and connect the outside world to the inside world. And sometimes we get stuck on that bridge. Actually, was looking up the mythology of a troll bridge the other day because as I was mapping out this hero's journey that a new client is going on with me, and just kind of projecting to see, because everything's a pattern, and going over to monomyths and stuff. And I looked at, the sad face, and I built that kind of, here are some milestones that they're going to be going through, kind of planning stuff out and looking at it. And as I was building the bridge, I was like, holy shit, trolls live under bridges to protect people, to make sure that they only the worthy go past this point, you know? So when that troll comes up, or you end up being the troll online or whatever it is, it's actually a good sign, you know? Like, just take a step back and listen to that troll that lives inside your head that says that you're not good enough, you're never going to do this, that, and the other. um, and recognize that, one, that's just one person's opinion, and opinions are like assholes, they all stink at some point. And you don't have to care about anyone's opinion, not even your own, of yourself. That one I learned from my relationship. I think I was 3 years into my relationship going, what the fuck is wrong with this woman? Like, what is she seeing me? You know what I mean? And then I realized that in my business, in my relationship, and just about everything in life, the market gets to decide my value, not me. I don't get to say to you whether or not you should like me. Now I can show up in ways that will push me into keep that guy at a distance realm. But me projecting my fear that you might reject me, um, I mean, it happens. It's just one of those defense mechanisms that happen in my brain. But realizing that I don't live in your skin and I don't see the world the way you do, and you can like me or not, and it doesn't really matter. And me even looking at myself in that reflection mirror, or that mental construct of myself, I look at it the same way, as like just one guy's opinion, and that guy's kind of an asshole anyhow, you know? So I don't know. I don't know why I went on that little tangent.
Well,
But
it's important because we try to take control of the experience other people have of us,
I
right?
think we try to take control of the experience we have of ourselves as well.
But when it comes down to like this online space, it's like, what if I say something and people are not going to like it? So I'm going to tone this shit down a little bit so it's digestible and it's palatable. So we're so
Mhm.
worried about the perceptions of others that we never fucking speak the truth out of the fear of perception. And so we're trying to, I want this person to perceive this a certain way, or I don't want this to be coming off as too harsh or too negative. So we're trying to control their experience of what we have to say, or the codependent
We're just
relationship.
speaking our truth and letting them experience what they can experience.
Right.
Well, if that's the case for anybody out there, people talk shit about Jesus. People talk shit about Gandhi. People talk shit. Like, there's nobody that's experienced anything that they're not going to talk shit about. And I mean, I think I tweet every now and then and talk shit to Elon Musk. Like like he gives a shit. You know what I mean? Like, the thing
Yeah.
is, if you know who you are and it's your truth, then the criticism that comes from other people, if it's valid, then it's valid criticism. If it's not, fuck them. Who cares, right? No
Fuck it.
fucks. All right. So no fucks given is your new group. Let's let people know about that, because I'm excited to see what you do with that.
Yeah, I got a couple minutes here before I get my next call, but essentially it's taking all the mental and emotional shit out of what it takes to run an online business and make it so much easier so you can run it on your terms and do what the fuck you want to do. So we're throwing out all the baggage of who you think you have to be, what you're supposed to do, and how you're supposed to say it. So you actually just fucking be yourself in the business and make a lot of money doing it.
I love it. I love it. So everybody should get into your group.
Everyone.
Thanks,
But if
everyone.
you don't like profanity, swearing, sexual innuendos, don't join because it's not going to be for you.
Yeah. That if you're more on the conservative side, and do you still get people that tell you that you should be more professional?
Hasn't been in a while. I think I weeded those people out, or they just don't follow me anymore. But I'm sure they'll re-engage my realm soon enough, and we can have a nice talk about professionalism.
Whatever happened to the guy that yelled at you for liking your own comments?
Oh, he blocked me.
He blocked you?
Yeah, he says it's too
Oh,
narcissistic.
I don't understand why people give narcissism such a bad name. I understand, because there's the polarities of narcissism. I think we should talk about that next time, because I think people need to understand that there is actually a healthy narcissism. There's a healthy level of narcissism that you need to develop in life. Otherwise, you're just not going to have as good of a time.
Right.
I'm Mr. Spiritual Guy, and if I, it cracks me up how many people are like, hey, you gotta let go of your ego, and I'm like, what?
Nope.
You ever met anybody who doesn't have a fucking ego? Like Buddha actually brought his ego back into the realm because he was like, I have some important things I need to tell other people's egos. So he kept it. Like it like if you don't have an ego, you don't have anything. Like that's the whole point. That's the whole psychology of being a human being. You have to have an ego. Now, whether or not that ego is out of control.
What we're trying to say is like, don't be so arrogant or don't be so egotistical, but that's not really what the ego in itself is. But we'll talk about it the next time because I got to run, man.
All right, go hop on your call. Love you, man.
Have a good one.
Later.